Discover the power of music to heal and uplift. Introducing NeuroVibe, where rhythm meets recovery. NeuroVibe fuses ambient music textures with rhythmic layers to create music that goes beyond relaxation. It's crafted to resonate deeply, perfect for relaxation, self-reflection, or therapeutic sessions. NeuroVibe invites you to connect with your inner self through immersive sound. Explore NeuroVibe today on SoundCloud and experience the transformative power of music. Tune in, find your vibe, and discover what NeuroVibe can do for you. For more information, check out NeuroVibe on SoundCloud today at soundcloud.com/NeuroVibe-brainspotting. NeuroVibe is intended for general wellness and relaxation purposes and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Explore NeuroVibe now on SoundCloud. Dive in, find your rhythm, and feel better with NeuroVibe.
Welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered with Perry Clark. This program looks at mental health from unique perspectives and shows you how to manage your life by finding the knots that help you and stay away from the ones that could be a disadvantage. Now, here is your host, Perry Clark.
Hello all, welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with you. And I want to remind you that this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. It does not constitute working with a licensed professional in your area on your unique issues. So, today's podcast, and we have another one of our international recordings here. We got someone from lovely England, but also by much further out as well. Today, we're going to be talking with Ritchie Nkana, is an award-winning author of Body and Bank Connections, founder of the Operator's Edge, and the high-demand speaker known for bridging peak performance with sustainable success. A former charter accountant with over 20 years of experience leading transformation in the banking industry. Ritchie now empowers high-achieving founders, executives, and professionals to scale without burnout. With certifications in personal training, sports nutrition, metabolic conditioning, and pain-free performance, Ritchie brings a rare blend of boardroom insights and performance science. His work helps leaders optimize their physical vitality as a lever for business growth and longevity and legacy. So welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls, Ritchie.
Thank you, Perry. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So how are things, as they say, on the other side of the pond?
It's actually hot right now. Wimbledon is in full swing right now, and the heat is on another level. But it's so good, though.
Gotcha. So, as I always ask most people, the question of, how did you get here?
Wow, that's a very good story. They say change happens two ways, right? It could either be through inspiration or desperation. I think for me, for the most part, it was desperation. When you look at yourself in the mirror and don't like what you see. And when I talk about looking in the mirror and not liking what you see, it's not so much about the aesthetics. Maybe that could been part of it too. But when I look in the mirror, I don't like the way I did show up for my family. When I look in the mirror, I did not like the way I showed up for my friends and loved ones. When I look in the mirror, I did not like the way I showed up for my employers. And to be honest, Perry, I was actually depressed and scared at that moment in time because I got health conditions around in my family. And at the rate that I was going, things were not looking good. So it was time for me to make a shift. I come from a banking background, as you indicated in the intro right there. I come from a banking background where it's all about grit and just sort of like keeping your head down and going after it. On paper, I seem to be successful, so you would say, right? And but if you'd ask me then, because in business we look at everything, we track everything from profits, we look at growth, we look at the revenues, we look at how we optimizing everything. But if you had asked me at that moment in time, if I was a business, how I was operating, I would have said I was trading at a massive loss. Right. Because tell you what, because talk about my energy was tanking. Energy was tanking, relationships on autopilot, and pretty much living on caffeine and adrenaline, pretty much most of the time. And I came to this realization, I had to make a shift. But the problem was most of the solutions that were out there were not right for me. I did reach out for help, which we all should, I think. It's not about pride. We need to reach out for help. And I reached out to personal trainers and the like, but the solutions that they gave me at that moment in time were just not right for me. Coming from a banking background, I was very busy. So the only window of time I had, be it a workout or whatever it is, was very late. Maybe it's a very short window in the evening, which is not right for me. That's the reason why I had to go back to the drawing board and find that solution. So all the certifications you mentioned there, that's what came out of that solution. It was me trying to fix that problem. And to do that is me going through that. I looked at everything from metabolic conditioning to PT to sports nutrition to see if I can actually fix myself. Not so much about to teach, but to fix myself. And that's what came out of that solution. And so in a nutshell, looking back, what came out of it is Operator's Edge, because tell you what, because when we talk about energy, we need energy. Energy pretty much drives execution, right? And we're talking about systems. Systems pretty much drive scale. And when it comes to relationships, it pretty much fuel everything. And I think that is something that I felt we don't talk enough about those things. We tend to push them aside. When you look at success, it's all maybe centered on just one area. And for me, on paper, or somebody look at me, I seemed to be successful, so to speak. But I was pretty much in what I would say success holo, so to speak, because it was empty. Rich on the bank account, but sort of like emotionally bankrupt, which was the place I was at. And I think that's what came out of, so that's a bit of a background. That's where I came from and to what I'm doing right now. So over the years now, not only did I help myself get out of it, but my mission now has been to help other high achievers pretty much bridge that gap. How is it that you can win have a full spectrum win, so to speak, in all areas, as opposed to just in one area, be it in case of health, business, and relationships. So that has been my goal and something I've been working on, I think, for the last, few years. And I'm so passionate about that.
So before we get into some of the other work you've done, I think you've raised an interesting question of this sort of image of being good on paper. Where do you think this comes from? Why does it seem like it seems to be a push in many communities, but especially in the communities that are African and African American and Black, where we are in the diaspora?
That's a very, very good question. And for the most part, I think when I look at it, and I was just talking to one of the founders I was working with, it's a very good question you just raised. It's very extrinsic. It's more extrinsic motivated as opposed to intrinsic, what we really want. I was talking to one of the pillars like I have in Operator's Edge is what we call clear. It's a framework in the case of like having that vision, which sort of like reframe what is it we're trying to achieve. One of the founders, I'll just give you an example. On paper, she's very successful and she's done great things. But when you look at it, when we went down to the bottom of it, is the things she was working towards are the ideas or the purpose that her father had instilled in her, right? And the sad bit about it, the father has been gone 10 years, but she's still in that bubble, right? And you feel she's actually sort of like she's achieving, but she feels like she's still not where she's supposed to be at. And that's where the problem is. I think it's very extrinsically motivated. And if so long as we keep on chasing something that is not within us, what it is that we're trying to achieve ourselves, what is our purpose, and having clarity of that purpose, we keep on chasing other people's ideas of success. That's where we fall into that loop, which is pretty much a cyclical kind of situation where we'll just never be satisfied. We're just not aligned with our goals and our purpose.
Well, then that also brings in the question, is the group that we're in also in alignment with where we want to go? And there is that old saying, surround yourself with people who either are smarter than you or reflect where you want to go. And what happens, especially when that happens, also be family.
Absolutely. We're an average of the 5 people we spend time, most of the time with, somebody once said, right? Mm-hmm. So it is very, very critical. That's the reason I talk about relationships. Yes. At times, yes, we can choose, like in case we can't choose family. Mm-hmm. But we have to be smart about, in the case of what relationships we choose, we bring within our circle, because we can choose that. Right. And that's the thing about, we can't control, looking at the controllables and uncontrollables, right? What is it we can control? We can control with thoughts, and I'll control with thoughts. And that includes maybe the environment of those inputs that we get. Because the more time we spend with people that feed us with information or data that is not aligned with our purpose, we're likely going to drift into that direction. So how is it that we can do that? It's about that awareness once again. What is my purpose? It gets back to clarity. Are you clear on what is your purpose? Are the people around you empowering you, lifting you up, or actually bringing you down? So that's something, I think, it's not something we just do once, maybe a month or once a year. It's something that we have to reflect back, I think, on a weekly basis. Like in my case, I have a scorecard, so to speak. In the case of doing top 2 relationships every week, I'll reflect back, right? It comes to relationships in the past week. Did I show up as I should? Be it if you're a leader, would I want to be my leader the way I showed up, right? So it's things like that. Is who are the people I'm spending time around with? If you're the smartest person in the room, it's time maybe to change that room as well, right? Because we need to keep on uplifting ourselves as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I think, too, gets into another flip side of it, where have you actually understood, and are you chasing the wrong thing? Even though you think you're chasing for the better and so forth, but are these actually the better? Which gets into that, I think, that intrinsic component you're talking about. Because as you said, you were in the banking industry, and there's definitely an image and illusion about the banking industry and the people in it and what you're investing in there.
Totally. I'm a prime example of that, right? I went to banking industry for different reasons. It wasn't so much in the case of, I think banking at that moment in time, I think the aura of banking and just what it is, obviously for me at that moment in time, it was financially motivated, right? So it's all about those kind of motivations as well. So it's about that awareness. Where is this, be it a career choice? Yes, at times we might go into a career, we might be doing a job that is not really congenial with our purpose, ultimate purpose. But so long as we have that awareness of that clarity and we're working towards that particular purpose, that is fine. What is dangerous is not being aware of the ultimate purpose, right? Because if we don't have a clear vision, right, as I say, like without a vision, people perish, right? Mm-hmm. Because we lose that purpose in life, in what is it we're going after. So yeah, so I think clarity is really key. I think for that, and if we're talking about banking, for instance, for me, I think, for me, I can speak for myself. The reasons I went to banking were pretty much misplaced. Yes, it was good when it came to my bank account and everything. Yes, it was good, and I enjoyed it. I learned quite a lot in there, but as I grew out of it, I found there was a bigger purpose for me in life. Hence the shift.
Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and talk about the operator's edge and the blueprint, because I think there's an element of that shift and what determined where you even started that were at play here, that some of which had to do with you, some of which had nothing to do with you, but that circle and group you were in.
Absolutely. I came from a banking background, and the key piece I was doing over the last 15 or so years has been driving transformation, building systems in the banking industry. Some of the systems, like, was to spend it's like millions and millions of pounds being poured into those systems, which actually drive billions. But what was very prominent, I kept on seeing, was that emphasis on the systems, the tools, the strategies that were, and all that investment into that. And not so much on the operators behind those systems, which is a bit of a shame. So you find those systems, yes, they're really efficient and everything, but you find the users are not where they're supposed to be. So that disalignment in a lot of ways. And you find even just the input, because it's very, very top down, according to strategy of the implementation and all that, you don't have that buy-in in the users. So you find those systems are not being made to the best use, which got me thinking is like, right, not only have I seen that in the fact that I've been coaching founders and other senior professionals who seem to be almost like misaligned in their careers. But I saw that even in the business world as well, that there was that misalignment. How is it that we can actually breach that? We need to step back and empower and work on the operator behind the business, right? It's all about how is it that we can help the operator behind the business scale without burnout. Because the thing about burnout is also very, very real, something I face myself. How is it that you can scale without burnout? By upgrading the operator behind the business. Then guess what? Once you do that, then those systems, those strategies are just levers, which would then be better utilized. Right. So which was the operator's edge is all about. So the operator's edge is based on the four pillars, right? The first one is what I refer to as the operator. So that's more around energy and health, right? Because energy drives execution, as I indicated earlier, right? The second pillar is all about, they call the architect. Like architects, they just don't go build a building. They have to have clarity of exactly what it is they're building before it actually comes to the being, right? So that is a clarity of exactly what it is what we want to get to. Then the third pillar is a build. That's when you get into the building part of it. And that's the scaling. Now, scaling, it's all about business systems, talking about personal systems as well, because we need to have systems in place for us to function and for us to implement, for us to execute at the top level. And that's not something we don't, I think, talk about enough, be it our routines. These are kind of systems that we can put into play for each and every area of our lives. Then the last bit is what we call the leader. And this is more about relationships, right? Because relationships pretty much fuel everything. So we're talking about relationships at home and in business. What sort of energy do you bring in a room when you walk into that room? And what lingers after you leave that room? So it's all about having that 360 kind of spectrum, winning not only in business, but also winning in life. And that's what Operator's Edge is all about.
All right. So this would be a guidepost for some people to be able to start doing that assessment process and start putting down the stakes they need to build it. Now, but again, I would also ask the question is, what do we need to start being more aware of so that we know that the assessment is off, that we're beginning from a faulty foundation?
Yeah, that's a good one. Actually, I've got a quiz that I normally offer because at times there's some touch points because we need to look at all those kind of three areas and we score it. I'll score it. So there's a quiz I would give. It's a free quiz anyway. I normally give. And you look at each and every area. Where is it? How is it I'm scoring this area? Because at times we don't need to fix everything. And at times what I've found is, for the most part, especially high achievers, you find you're winning in one area. I was guilty of that as well. You find you're winning because one area is actually you're winning in that area and you're going after it. Then before you know it, the other bit is actually slipping. Be it relationships, be it if you're winning in business, you find your health is actually slipping, right? You're not putting in as you should so you can actually show up at your best. So you're not pretty much executing as you should. So how is it that you can have that 360? Again, it's that awareness. So how is it that you can have an audit? So it starts with every week. How is it that you can have an audit? Right? Have an audit of the past week. How did I show up in each one of these 3 areas? Be it with my energy, my health. How did I show up? When we talk about my system, my personal systems, how did I show up? Did I execute as I should, right? When it comes to my business, be it my life, right? How is it that I did show up? Did I show up as I should in the case of, be it executing in business so I can actually keep on growing? Or did I actually level off? Which area can I actually improve? Talk about relationships. Did I show up for my family, for my kids, for my employers, for my reports? Right? Did I show up as a boss that I would want to sort of like, if I look in the mirror and I'm looking at an ideal boss, did I show up as that person? Right. So it's those kind of things. Again, so it's all about reviewing the week. I'll call it in the case of playing back the tapes of the past week, playing back the tapes of the past day as well. So we can do it on a daily basis, right? You can do it on a weekly basis as well. So like on a daily basis, I look like, right, okay, in these 3 areas, how did I actually do? Right. So the good things that actually work today, right? This worked good. I can actually invest this into tomorrow. So you create that momentum. So it's about feedback, having that feedback loop. Because if you don't review what is not measured, you can never tell, right? So it's having that feedback loop.
So then that leads to the question about, again, how are we determining and building that feedback loop and that assessment? Where is it? And being aware of where that assessment is coming from, maybe a bad foundation, maybe a place that is actually skewed. And I know, especially with mental health, and what I do with some clients, is about recognizing that system, when that system's off, before we can make any of the larger changes.
Absolutely. And yeah, it goes back to that in the case of the awareness and awareness of purpose as well, right? And also be willing to get feedback, right? And again, that's the reason I think what we talked about earlier in the case of having the right circle of people around you. Because if you got the right circle of people around you, you're going to get, that will also help as in the case of like that sounding board or that kind of feedback that you can actually get if you're getting off course. Right.
But again, how did you determine that these are the right ones to be around you to be able to give you that feedback?
That's a very good one. And again, it's more around, are they aligned with your purpose? Right? Because that's the thing about it, because you should actually be able to feel that. Is it, so you meet somebody, right? You're having a conversation with them. Are they helping you grow? You go like, it's just something you're going to ask you a question, right? It's not so much, I don't know, this might sound selfish in a way. It goes like, what is in it there for me, right? At times it might be looked at as me getting, but it's not always about getting. Well, what is it there for me at times can be, what is it that I'm actually giving? Because in the room, we're talking about the friends and whatever you're going. It's not just about taking and receiving. It's about what it is that I can actually give. So it's about that exchange of energy, because that's what brings about that growth, right? And again, that's the principle on Operator's Edge, because it's a collective. It's not that somebody should have, only one person should have the knowledge. It's about that collective. Guess what? Think about the Avengers. Like, the Avengers are great individually, but together they're unstoppable. And that's the same thing we're talking about. So how is it that not only it's not about me just taking, but also giving, so that collectively we make that magical sort of like force that can pretty much help us, in the case of elevate each other in a way. Yeah.
So how do you think that's also playing out in the diaspora?
Well, sadly, I think it can be a little bit disjointed. I think when it comes to diaspora, in a lot of ways, I think there is some ways, I think, to grow in that area. There are certain communities that are pretty much a little bit more in touch with that, as far as in the case of enhancing. Because talk about relationships are very rarely found. You have to foster those relationships, right? And at times, especially in this day and age right now, it's very, very hard to, which you just talked about right there. There's always about just what's in it for me, looking at it from a selfish perspective, but not so much about how is it not in there for me, but what is it there that I can actually give, right? That is supposed to be reciprocal. It's always like one-sided, which is a shame. And in that respect, you find that relationships are always like one-sided and very, very selfish. And in that respect, it ends up not as authentic, not as fulfilling. And that's something I think we need to work on a little bit more. But it starts with oneself. It starts with looking in the mirror, because I think the more we talk about these things that we're talking right now, the more we're aware of these things, the more likelihood that we'll make that shift in the way we communicate and how we relate with people, or relate in diaspora, so as to speak.
And especially that standpoint of, again, making sure that the external or things that we're working towards fit where we are and fit what we need. Not always what is convenient for others' appearances.
Exactly. And that's where the problem is, right? It's about convenient for others, right? It's all very extrinsic. The key is stepping back and looking like, right, okay, what's the purpose here, right? Is this aligned with my values as well? I think values are very, very key as well in the case of the values, because once we're grounded with our values, that's another way we can actually weed out some of, be it friends or circles that are not aligned with us, because are those circles aligned with my values, right? Yeah.
Well, so the other part there, and let's go through that before we go into a break here, is what about when we're looking at those values being short-term to long-term, or even intermediate term? Because the aspect of somebody who's living in survival is really only thinking short-term as opposed to long-term.
Absolutely. And you're right, because be it the purpose or goals, at times we always have to have, we have to have this longer term view. But then, even though we have that longer term view, we have these pretty much milestones, shorter term milestones that we have to keep on fulfilling. All right. So long as we have a clear picture, right? And we keep on moving forward, because it's like making the jump, right? We don't really focus on the in between. So long as we're very clear on actually where we want to land, the in between we can sort of like navigate. That might shift a little bit, and at times we might have these values. So long as the values, I think, are I think values should not really change as far as in the case of that long term where we actually want to be. How we get there, those are kind of things that might actually shift on a day-to-day basis, because going after maybe a goal or a purpose is very rarely a very straight path. We have to know, it's about navigating. It's like driving, like here in England, I'm in London, driving to Birmingham, right? It doesn't mean that if I'm driving, I find we got a motorway here, say M40 is shut. It's shut. It doesn't mean I need to turn back, right? But if I'm clear on the purpose of where I actually want to go to, right, I'll just find a different way. Do I go around it, right? Do I go over it, or do I just find a different way to actually get to Birmingham, right? So it's the same thing. We need to still be clear of our ultimate indicates, and values, I think, is something that really should drive us. But how we get there is something that might shift on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, whatever it is. Yep.
Which then also, I think, brings in the question of where then is in our circle or in our families, the ideas, the sometimes shame that comes up in there, not allowing for that shift. Because I can just think of the standpoint of, oh yeah, you've been trained, because you spoke about the person who had been, her father was dead for 10 years. Yep. And she was still struggling with that aspect of the things that were associated with her father. Now, how much of that also came from her family? And the idea is like, oh, what if your father could see you now, both wonderful, but also a thing of don't deviate because your father is watching, or right now you don't want to shame the idea that we're holding to with your image of your father. How did they actually deal with that moment when they had to shift? What changed in their relationships?
Yeah, and that's very, very key. That's very, very important to just mention there, because at that moment in time, yes, it will always be, we can never please everybody. That's one thing we need to be very clear about. But it's all about, so long as we're not really, we're not hurting anybody. I think it's something that we have of clear conscious that this is our purpose. And we help people do that. What I'm just going to say is there's one model, I think, by Jeff Bezos, talks about minimum regret model, right? Because the thing about it, yes, we might still stick with that. Maybe my dad wanted us to do that. But when you get to 80, 90, and you're sitting back on that rocking chair and looking back over your life, how many regrets are you going to have? It's all about minimizing those regrets as much as possible. Right. So that is what's key. So are you going to, it's the kind of thing you need to look at. In my case, I'll look at it from that perspective is right. Okay. Yes, I want to do this. This is not my purpose, but I have to do it for the sake of pleasing somebody else. But when I get to 80, 90, I'm not as pretty much in the case of, I don't have the vitality as I did have maybe when I was in my prime. How do I minimize those regrets? Is this kind of decisions I would have actually made at that moment in time? Right.
So I'll challenge you just one bit, because as I hear that, and especially with what I deal with within mental health, and you talk about not causing harm to anybody, are you even considering that you may not be harming yourself?
That is very, very important, because yes, that's exactly it. Because extrinsically, we talk about, yes, I'm not harming somebody, but I will be harming myself by not going after my purpose. Right? Which
then also feeds into what you're saying about the 99% of regrets and being able to even reach that 70, 80 to be sitting in the rocking chair.
Totally. Absolutely.
So that's something to be thought about as well in this. It's a very nuanced thing.
Exactly. Because the thing about it, at times it's not, in case of mental health for the most part, because it can be because of the extrinsic kind of stuff that comes upon us, right? The pressures, right? Yes, that might sort of like it's in our thoughts and all that as well that comes to play with that. But we get all these pressures from all different directions. And we almost like in that pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm.
And it's things like that, it's about just that awareness, because we're not aware of the fact that, right, if I keep on going in the same direction, because my family maybe want me to do this, but in my case, I'm not aligned with it. It's almost like killing me on the inside on a daily basis. How long are you going to take that? So you can just imagine how much that would have actually an impact on your mental health as well, longer term. And in the case of like when that impacts on mental health, that's our physical health as well gets impacted as well.
All right. So I think that's the place for us to take a break here on Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. So we'll be back shortly. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with Ritchie Nkana, banker, physical trainer, and author. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back.
Discover the power of music to heal and uplift. Introducing NeuroVibe, where rhythm meets recovery. NeuroVibe fuses ambient music textures with rhythmic layers to create music that goes beyond relaxation. It's crafted to resonate deeply, perfect for relaxation, self-reflection, or therapeutic sessions. NeuroVibe invites you to connect with your inner self through immersive sound. Explore NeuroVibe today on SoundCloud and experience the transformative power of music. Tune in, find your vibe, and discover what NeuroVibe can do for you. For more information, check out NeuroVibe on SoundCloud today at soundcloud.com/NeuroVibe Brainspotting. NeuroVibe is intended for general wellness and relaxation purposes and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Explore NeuroVibe now on SoundCloud. Dive in, find your rhythm, and feel better with NeuroVibe.
Our lives and the world around us can get messy and frustrating. Untangle and Grow Counseling's focus is to untangle that mess and make sense of it so you have a good foundation to build and grow from. Visit us on the web at untangleandgrowcounseling.com. Perry Clark offers individual psychotherapy, couples and family therapy, and adolescence therapy from a variety of coping materials and resources. Visit untangleandgrowcounseling.com for more information.
Follow Voice America at facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
You are listening to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. If you have a question or comment about our podcast, send an email to pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. That's pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. And now, back to the program.
Hello all, welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with you. And I'm talking with Ritchie Nkana, who is from London, and is a author, physical trainer, banker, and, well, fellow of the diaspora. So one of your other books and talk about here is the Body Bank Connection. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. As I think I didn't mention earlier, but I was talking to the background to that. I was talking to my fellow bankers at that moment in time, and about what they thought about fitness. And for the most part, when I have that conversation, is six pack, which is quite interesting. It's like, oh, that's quite interesting. What if I told you that studies have shown that when you exercise, you are 20% more productive? Just before that, actually, to go like, oh, Richard, I do understand the benefits of exercise and fitness, but I just don't have the time. I need to put food on the table. I was like, wow, that is quite interesting. It's like, what if I told you if when you exercise, you're 20% more productive? I was like, that's interesting. And because according to studies, and what if I told you that when you exercise, right now you're in this environment, I'm in banking as well. Guess what? When in this environment, our stress levels are elevated, off the roof, right? And when the stress levels are elevated, cortisol levels are elevated. And what do you need to counter that? You need things like serotonin and dopamine to counter that. And guess what? When you exercise, that is something that you get naturally, right? I also covered BDNF. BDNF drives neurogenesis, which is reproduction of brain cells. And studies have shown that when you exercise, BDNF can be enhanced as much as threefold.
And what is BDNF?
BDNF is a neurofactor which drives neurogenesis, which is reproduction of brain cells. Yeah, and it was found that when you exercise, that can be enhanced as much as threefold. There's also another study, by the way, when it comes to cognitive function, depression. We talk about mental health here. There was a study by UC Davis, and they found that people that were in a depressed state had levels of GABA and glutamate. These are two neurotransmitters suppressed. And what's interesting is when you exercise, GABA and glutamate can actually be elevated, right? So talking to my fellow bankers is like, now with just these 3 points I just mentioned right there, now do you still think fitness is a necessity or an option? Go like, well, get to think about it now. It's actually a necessity. It's like, yeah, exactly. So that is the genesis of body and band connection, because I found that was a theme. Because for the most part, when you talk about fitness is always looked at more for the physicality perspective. But what is not spoken of enough is the mental health aspect of it and how we show up, performance aspect of it. Right. So body and band connection, the book, yes, you can look at it as in a literal sense, the body and the bank as your bank account in a literal sense, but also as a metaphor, right? Whatever bank we're looking to fill, be it our energy bank account, our productivity bank account, our fulfillment bank account, it starts with our bodies and how we actually show up. With the literal side of things, when it comes to the finances, the idea behind that is that we get paid for what? We get paid for the value that we bring to the marketplace, right? And with the reasoning I gave earlier, how studies have shown that when we exercise, we're 20% more productive. Guess what? We're a lot more productive. There was a study done by Leeds University, and they did a study on a batch of 200 people, and they found those people that actually exercised actually did show up. They tend to be a little bit more productive, a little more calmer, right? So guess what? So when we exercise, we're a lot more productive, and because we get paid for value that we bring to the marketplace, that is likely going to translate in actually how much we get paid. So that is pretty much the genesis behind it.
So you mentioned literacy, but I would think there's also the aspect of money relationship too. And that's often what I know I speak about with clients, about what's their relationship to how and why they're using money, or even how they just even view money. Not just the literacy about how it's working, but how they view it. Which I think sounds very similar to what you're talking about with even just looking at the health.
Oh, yeah. It's very, very important in the case of how we look at money, because money is just but a tool, right?
But there's a lot of people who don't see it as a tool. No,
they don't. That's the thing about it. So it's all about how we relate to money. And I'll call it in the case of like a money story, because I do coaching and coaching and financial coaching as well. And normally what we normally do on the mindset stuff, because before we can even go into the practicalities of talking about the financial planning and all that kind of stuff, or the good stuff that comes with it, we need to work on the mindset. What I call the face it, right? So with that is more about the money story. What is our money story? Because for the most part, a lot of it actually is a narrative we have built about money over time as we keep on growing up. Stories like, say, money does not grow on trees. These are kind of things we're hearing. Yes, it's just in passing, but guess what? That is instilling that seed in our heads. So how is it that we can untangle some of those stories and then tell those stories that we've actually we've picked up growing up, right? So yeah, so it is, narrative is actually one element that we need to look at, but it could also be experience as well, right? And we talk about relationships as well, the people actually we hang out with as well, and actually how we've actually viewed money. But it's also about the experiences we've had. Mark Twain has a saying, a cat that sits on a hot stove will never likely going to sit on a hot one, but we're never likely going to sit on a cold one either, right? Because maybe we've just had one bad experience with money, right? But then we relate it to that incident. There's a study that was shown that on a daily basis, like a 500 billion or something like that, that is lost on the financial markets, not from investing, but lack of investing. Because due to paralysis of analysis, people are just not taking. They're not taking that opportunity to actually invest, so they're losing out on things like compound interest. So it seems like that. Yeah. So you're right. It's all about having the narrative that we have in relation to money, and it's starting from that before we can look at it. Yes, it is a tool, but how is it we can actually manage it? Start with the mindset first.
Which does also mean that narrative can be established by some of the conditions we grow up in. Whether the standpoint of whether we had a lot of flow to it, or it was a lot of scarcity, and even the issue of poverty. There are some people who let's be frank, work themselves to death just for the idea that they will never be in poverty again, but then it results in them missing out on a lot of other relationships that are also important.
Absolutely. It's having that right balance, right? And that scarcity mindset as well is also very, very dangerous as well, right? So how is it that we can actually balance it? And again, it's all about how we view money, again, viewing it as a tool. That it provides the necessities, right, that we need, because we need money to pretty much do everything that for the most part, pay for the roof over our heads, clothes behind our back, in the case of the food that we put on the table. Those are kind of key kind of things. So how is it that we can navigate that and not let it be something that we dwell on too much? And that's the reason why I think financial literacy is actually key. How is it that we can have that understanding, take care of it, get it out of the way, so we can focus on other things that actually matter, that we can actually value more, right? And that's the reason finances, we need to put that to bed first. It's a shame. I was running a program for young people of the age of 10 to about 15. It's a financial literacy boot camp, 8-week boot camp. It's actually funded by Wells Fargo. And it's a shame that, kids in school, and that's something that I've been struggling with, that we don't get taught about financial literacy in school. They have compulsory subjects that they have to learn, but financial literacy is not taught. And the funny part about it is, these subjects that we learn in school, some we might never have to get to use it, right? Whereas financial literacy, you have no choice. Each and every one of us will have to face that, though it's not compulsory. That's actually taught in schools, right? So we learn, by the time we pick up, we're learning from mistakes. And it's like, right, okay, you've made all these mistakes, now trying to learn it. You find it's a little bit too late. So it would be so much better if we give our kids that great head start beforehand, if that financial literacy could actually be taught in schools beforehand.
All right. And is that part of the identity shift advantage?
Oh, absolutely, because it is identity shift, right? How is it that we look at what I manage in the case of like shifting from, in the case of like things like we just talked about, in the case of money does not grow on trees, to in the case from a scarcity mindset to more of an abundance mindset. And at times, abundance is not so much about making more. Abundance at times is about cutting down. I was just talking about that. At times it's cutting down, living within our means, right? So how is it that we can be educated in that area? And at times when you look at finances or financial literacy and being financially independent, it's not about being a millionaire. It's about being able to be comfortable for your own needs. I've coached people in the past who, Ritchie, for me, I'll be comfortable just having $40K come into my bank account without me lifting a finger. I'll be comfortable. That is financial independence for me. I got people coming out like, for me, it's $250K minimum, me not lifting a finger. That's for me, that's financial independence. You see, so everybody's purpose, everybody's goals are very, very different. And when we talk about abundance, it's not so much about just being a millionaire, but how is it that it can sustain your lifestyle, your values, your purpose. Yep.
Which also, again, feeds into how we're dealing with our mental health and we're doing the work on that. So, common question I ask everybody comes on here generally is, what do you think is a myth and reality around mental health?
I think the myth for me is this thing that you almost like soft. If you're facing mental health challenges. And that's something I found, I think, firsthand. For the most part, each and every one of us have had a time, some maybe worse than others, as far when it comes to in the case of mental health challenges, because it is in this hustle and bustle world, there's so much a lot of stress going on, we get into that kind of situation at times that we have to have that awareness and unlearn that sort of like myth that you have to be soft if you feel you're being mentally challenged in a way. It's that it is just the body. It is at times in a case of feedback, and that there is help. At times we need to just seek help. If you feel that you are getting into that kind of position, reach out for help, because you reaching out for help does not make you weak. Yeah. So for me, I think the myth is about being soft.
So then again, I would ask this question: why does this seem so prevalent of an idea in the diaspora?
I think it's a conditioning. I think it's only recently that mental health, I think, is being accepted as something that is a lot of people actually will get to face. In the past, I think mental health was seen as something that is very, very rare, something that is uncommon, and I think it's about that stigma. I think the stigma attached to it, and I think that stigma is slowly being erased.
And it seems like it's more easily erased with women than it is with men as well. So what would you say?
Absolutely.
So what would you say to the various men of the diaspora who might be listening to this?
Is that you're not soft if you feel you have mental health challenges, or you feel low. That does not make you weak. Talk about these things, right? And I think, yes, you're right. I think with men, I had some of the things I think I've faced myself, and I've seen with friends, is that at times we don't open up enough. How is it we can create a safe space? And that goes back to what we talked about earlier in the case of having a right circle of people around you. Because if you've got a right circle of people around you, you create a safe space where you can actually open up. So find a room, find a circle where you can actually open up, right? And feel safe, right? And because that does not make you weak. That does not make you soft.
So no truer words said. So where can folks find you if they want to learn more and pick up your book and maybe even work with you, whether they're on this side of the pond or not?
Yeah, the best place to find me, LinkedIn. I'm posting. I'm on LinkedIn pretty much on a daily. Ritchie Nkana, LinkedIn. You can also find me on X. Those are two main platforms I'm on.
All righty. So we'll try to have some of that information in the show notes as well. Otherwise,
Awesome.
Richie, I'd like to thank you for taking the time with our time zone differences here between California and London, for taking a moment to have this conversation.
No, really appreciate it, Perry. It's been a great pleasure and really love the conversation we had.
Likewise.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, folks. We'll be back with more. And I think probably our next one will probably be finally Dr. Mercedes and I having our talk about Ironheart. So stay tuned for that one as it's coming up next. And we will see you then. Be well, folks.
Thank you for tuning in for Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. Be sure to join your host, Perry Clark, for another episode on the podcast coming soon on the Voice America Empowerment Channel.